LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logrhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today.
Welcome back, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. Here with John Strand in studio and Michael Santar-Kangelo on the lines via Skype. And we're going to talk about some startup news. Some startup, I don't know if they're stories, articles. I'm still struggling with the right word. Like every time I say it, feels like, anyway, we'll come up with a better word for it. But you get stories with tractors and stuff. That's the one
that's the one I wanted to jump into.
Can we start with that one? Because John and I feel like it was written about us.
Let's go to that one. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes whenever the stories come up, I feel like he finds these stories and he puts them out, and he's like, yeah, John's going to bite on that one. This one has tractors. Yes. So, and Paul knows that I love backhoes, and he loves backhoes.
I do. I'm a huge fan.
I now see why we get along. I will stop and check out tractors. That's how
you need to come out to South Dakota. I've got lots of heavy machinery.
We almost moved there, not far from where you are.
And firearms.
We were traveling by RV. That was one of the two spots, and then we ended up at Myrtle Beach, which was not one of the two spots.
Well, you may be looking for places I'm telling you, it's a good place. Come on out. I got a house that you can stay in, and it's out in the middle of the woods, and you guys got a place to stay. Perfect. So this particular article really resonated with me. Now, for those of you that don't know, Paul talks a lot about our startup, and Paul has a different perspective that I do, and he gets a lot of assistance from Michael, and he gets a lot of assistance from the people that come on the show, and Ron Gula, and that's not my thing, and that's intentional. Paul's the CEO. I kind of do the CTO thing. And one of the things that resonated with me about this article is it kind of set up a lot of the stuff that's happened since we started this. Mm-hmm. So if we go through, we start about sprint, stumble, recover. I think, my God, that is absolutely the truth. Yep. Because one of the things that's important is getting something done right. Because if we would have started with the way we had started the product a year ago, we would have done it completely wrong, been committed to doing it wrong, and it would have been even more expensive than it actually was. When we first started, I thought we did that, though. We did. We did Elk Stack. Yeah. Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana.
But then we did the Node.js interface, which is kind of the same.
It worked. But that's a whole different story. But we're finding out that these different technologies do not fit the specific space. Right. And what else is interesting is when we look at a lot of the vendors that are kind of following what we do whenever we give presentations, we'll talk to some of the vendors, and they're like, we're doing full log analysis beaconing, and we're running an Elk. And it's like, why are you doing that? Well, we saw your presentation. You're like, oh, God.
Oh, no.
But they have like a lot of developers committed to it, and they're going to fail a lot bigger. Yep. And that was something that was very interesting. There's lots of stumbling that goes with it. Natural time, it talks about efficiency. I would also say inefficiency. Whenever you're moving into anything that you do, you fully expect that things are going to take longer. They're inevitably going to take longer. And then the big one is this, trust your vision. And this is one of those things that's very fundamentally different for Paul and myself. We have an idea as far as hunt teaming, and we had an idea for active defense, and Paul made a joke about honeypots. And we constantly joke about it. We talked about active defense for 6-7 years. Yeah. And everybody took everything that we talked about and they turned it into a better honeypot with a better GUI. And that isn't what we were talking about. Nope. Honeypots have been around for a long time. So that's part of the vision, building out the product for doing cyber attribution, the TrackBack application. And also on the AI hunt, we had a place where we wanted to go, and we kept on moving towards it. And the other thing is we've seen a lot of companies that have actually failed at doing the implementation of threat hunting.
Well, and I think it's important when they say trust your vision, Michael, I think it's important. One of the things John and I did early on was we challenged the vision. I think each of us challenged the vision, and it got into some heated discussions. But coming out of that, John and I now completely 100% trust the vision. And I think it's important for early on, for the founders, whoever you are, to have that conversation because you're going to come out of it and have a much better foundation.
And the other I can tell you definitively that's a really good idea. And when we look at it too, it's people sometimes don't want to have that conflict, and you need to. There's no, you guys are good friends. You guys work well together. have the conflict, get it out, and resolve it, and have that clarity of that vision and that focus, and that'll carry you through. What I'm starting to see now in a lot of like post-Series A startups is they had a founder or a team, and by hook or by crook, they forged that vision. And hey, look, now we just added the team. They lose sight of that vision. Once they lose sight of that vision, they can't get the traction they want. Everything starts stalling. Deals that they used to be able to turn in 3 to 6 months are now taking 12 to 15 months. You know why? Because they lost sight of it. Yeah. So I think the thing to keep in mind, too, is that have it, check it, and then make sure other people have bought into it and they understand it the same way you do. Well, you guys went through some nuance to get where you are.
And the other thing is a lot of what we're doing involves education. And whenever we talk, I'm not going to mention some of the companies that do this. We see them failing, and we see companies that have failed, not because their product didn't rock, but because they couldn't sell the damn thing. And a lot of people don't understand the space, and that's okay. And I think that that's one of the things with Security Weekly that we bring to the table is we can actually build that market by building better security engineers. There's another little logo in here that I thought was fantastic. It had the little Mario upgrade thing with the fire. Where is that one? Where you're not selling a product.
Your customers don't care.
Yeah, you're selling an upgrade improvement. It's your customers don't care, exactly. And it has Mario, it shows Big Mario throwing fireballs, and that's what people want. And that's right there, the little flower that teaches you to shoot fireballs out of your mouth. That's Security Weekly, and that's what it's always been. And that's what we're ultimately trying to do is put a product in place that allows people to upgrade their knocks, upgrade their skill sets, so we can actually do that. So this article resonated with me a lot. And, I think that also, Michael, I think one of the big things that's been good is I've got a pretty good idea what water I want to play in here. Paul has a good idea of what water he wants to play in here. And as much as I think Paul likes getting his hands dirty and playing with the technology, he knows where he's better focused. And I think that helps great. And me trying to stay the hell out of his way is also important.
Well, and what's great about that too, though, is that so if we go back and we look at it internally, what that means is you guys, even if it's developing your own shorthand, your communication is going to have a lot less friction, and you're going to have that understanding that you need to have in order to get where you want to be. And that's fantastic. If you go back to the customers buying progress, and you already said this, and I think you said it really succinctly. Most of these products that don't work, it's because they don't know how to sell them. It's because they don't understand the problem that they're actually trying to solve. They get excited, and I get this. I fell prey to it myself. You get excited about the features of something, and you kind of lose sight of what it's able to do. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. People don't buy because you've got some widget, or they like the switch, or it's a polished knob. None of that shit matters to them. They want to know, do you understand my actual problem? And if I give you money, am I better as a result? By the way, if you're in security today and you struggle getting your budget, it's because the CFO doesn't care about an ROI. What the CFO is asking you is, if I give you this pile of cash, are we better because of it? Yes or no? And if it's like security, we're better. That's not convincing to anybody, and it doesn't work when you're trying to sell security.
And I like what you said about ROI. A lot of people have been trying to sell security in the concepts of ROI, and I don't think that works. Right? It didn't work 10 years ago. It's not.
What I would say is it can work. It's not worth it. Right? I mean, my background is as an economist. So when somebody says, "Oh, you can't do it," bullshit. Totally do it. Is it worth doing it? No, it's the wrong measure, and it's fascinating. We in security, we look at it and we say, oh, well, they asked for an ROI. Yes, because they don't know any other way to say to you, I don't understand what you're telling me, and I don't understand if there's any value in this. So what do I get for giving you the money? But if you talk to most CFOs and you say, do you really want an ROI analysis? That's like, no.
Well, you're measuring it wrong, and I think Michael, one of your things is, like, how do you measure it? And I think it's it's an equally as a profound question as what problem you're trying to solve. Like, it's the next question, right? Like, okay, my solution. Okay, it's the fourth question.
But it's the question.
Yeah.
What questions do you
measure it? ROI is not how you measure it.
And you have people that come to us, and it's great because I don't have to sell to CEOs. They know who we are. They come to us for, like, penetration tests on BHIS.
That's a good situation to be in.
And they have a question, and we can answer that question. And I think with the products that we're getting into, I think there's two questions that we're setting out to answer. And Paul and I spent a lot of time talking about this crap. The question is, who is attacking us right now? I think that we have products that can help answer that question. And the other question is, are we currently compromised by bad guys that are good enough to bypass the advanced technologies that we have in place to detect them? If you can answer questions, that's far more powerful, I think, than the concept of ROI. I think that ROI was a trap. People had this idea of what C-O's believed. They created a straw man for what C-O's believed. It was incorrect. It was based off of Hollywood, and they completely screwed it up.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was based off of Hollywood, and I know that you're using that categorically, but it was based from, there was a misunderstanding. We asked for money, they said no. We said, why not? They said, I don't understand the ROI. We went, ROI? Oh, and then we tried it, it didn't go anywhere, and then we said, well, ROI is stupid. ROI is not stupid, but I think Paul said it right. It's not the right measure for this. But I'm upfront with everybody when I look at value. And we give people 5 lenses of value, and you can compute an emotional, a logical, and a financial value. If I give you a pile of cash, frankly, 90 days from now, I want to know that it's generating some sort of a positive value, and that's what I want to measure. And positive value isn't always, is it giving me more money in the bottom line? No. Is it increasing the value of your team? Are you making better decisions about risk faster? Are you increasing your resilience? Are these the things that are going to help you as a company? Good. Fine. Make that case. And that goes back to your point. If I can ask intelligent questions and I can give you answers, because as soon as you mention that, who's attacking me, what popped in my head is, yeah, and do I have the right protections in place? And do I even know how to respond to that? And what does that mean? That leads to so many places that have good conversations. That's exactly what we want. But we need to be able to answer. I got to tell you, I'm doing this with a lot of companies right now, and when I get to the value and the measurement questions, it is a struggle. And I either get dude, I don't even know, and people throw their hands up, or they say, yeah, I don't know, but we'll try to figure it out. That's where, as an industry, we got to do a better job of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think it all starts with very uncomfortable questions, and I think
they're exceptionally uncomfortable.
Like learning about you over the years. One of those things, you came into the show on Security Weekly, and you are inherently a different creature than most of the people that are on Security Weekly, and I don't think you hide from that at all. And it's one of those things where you ask the very, very difficult questions that the propeller heads cannot ask, and a lot of times they cannot answer. Right. Exactly. And I think that's a fundamental shift that is missing in a lot of the conversations. And it goes back to the widget thing that I mentioned. Everyone wants a new shiny widget, and that's great. But if it doesn't interact with the existing infrastructure, if it doesn't support the existing infrastructure, do I have to go out and have another view of it? Do I have to go and retrain my entire team on a new technology? Then that may be really, really cool. But you haven't asked that really painful, hard to answer question. And I think that's kind of one of those things that you've been bringing to the show for the past few years. And I think that helps. And it's hitting a lot of people in IT kind of sideways.
Yeah, and I'm on a mission to keep doing it. And I'll tell you, it's fascinating because the questions that I ask, they seem so simple until you start diving into them. And then you're like, whoa. Just to be clear, I'm never trying to create an existential crisis in people. I've looked at it from both sides because I'll tell you what, I ask this of a lot of leaders in organizations, and a lot of them are like, well, Michael, which is code for I'm about to throw a whole bunch of shit your direction, and I hope some of it you like. And it doesn't normally work that way. But these are questions but I'll tell you what, though, when you get better at asking these questions, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you get the reputation of making better decisions. And then that leads you to a whole lot of really good things. And so, yeah, we'll keep doing it. We'll keep working it. But and this is the interesting thing to keep in mind, too. This is what I like about doing this part of the program, too. If you're in a security team today, then it's not just are you buying you have customers too. And so it's not just, I'm buying this to solve a problem. It's what are the problems your organization needs to solve? And we're not good at that. But here's the beauty. In security, you totally have the ability to be good at it. We, by our nature, we have to touch everything. And if you can bring some of that curiosity to play, man, you're going to really understand that organization better than everybody else. And that sets you up for some good long-term success. So I like that.
Well, and I like how it's multifaceted too. Like the things we talk about to make product companies successful and understanding the right questions to ask also apply to the people we're talking to who work for an organization, because they have to either have the questions asked of them or ask the questions of others in their organization to, like Michael's saying, better understand the organization, so that when I sit on the product vendor, there's a flow of information. And it's like what we know in order to be effective at creating and selling a product, they're also selling a product too. Mm-hmm. When you're a security person working in a company, like you're selling the product of
That's exactly
security, right?
Well,
so you have to know those things too.
And it's one of the things, you remember Scott Weil from years ago at the SANS Institute. He said, you're never, and he was talking about this with SANS training, and I think it applied to what we do at BHIS. You are never, ever selling directly to the people who picked up the phone and called you. You are not selling to the technical person that wants to go to SANS training. You are not selling to the IDS analyst or the network penetration tester. You're selling to his or her boss.
Yep.
And you have to equip those people that you're talking to become your salespeople, to be able to talk to their bosses. And if you don't give them the tools that they need to effectively communicate your message, you're going to lose all the time. And that kind of also goes
I couldn't agree with that more. Yep, I completely agree.
I love this this other article. I don't think we look at things this way. Why do you need to cross half your prospects off of your list? I think if you're crossing half your prospects off of your list, then your messaging is wrong. And I think that this particular article, I think that it actually sidesteps that entire problem. Because we have found, I don't know, when was the last time Melissa talked about? Like, it's well into the 60s of the people that come to us actually convert into sales. Now, it doesn't happen directly. It might be 60, 70%.
I think you've got a really good point on that. I think you're right. I think that's a messaging thing. I put this in, and let's talk about both of these at the same time. Funnels for startups. So let me give everybody a crash course on funnels. If you don't understand it, this is important, and I'm going to draw a different side of this too. So the funnel is how companies view people moving through it. You'll also hear people talk about customer journeys. And now, for as much as you'll see about it, you'll see written about how it's all rubbish and that's not the direction we should go. But I'll tell you something interesting. The deeper I'm getting into understanding sales and understanding those processes and why they're important and the buy-in you need at each of those places. I mean, John, this goes to your point. If you've got the messaging right and you understand who your target market is and you understand their pain points the way you guys do, then you've given them a cognitive ease to be able to move through that process and make those cases to people, and it lets you have a very high conversion rate. That's awesome. That's a really powerful sign, and that's the kind of thing that like Will Lynn would look at and go, okay, these guys get it. They understand it. There's a flip side to it, and I'm going to tie a couple things together. I'll name the name. It was HubSpot. HubSpot reaches out. Like if you go to their website, first of all, they do great content, and that's how they get you. So HubSpot's one of those. We help you with your website, and we help you with your automation marketing, and we help you with your automation sales, and all sorts of stuff. They're good. They're a bit of a premium, but they're worth it. Every time you go to their website and download something, you get somebody who pretty much the next day sends you a note and says, "Hey, I noticed you're on our website, and I took a look at your website, and I'd love to talk to you." And so what I've done is I've decided I'm never going to be rude to them because I don't know if I'm going to work with HubSpot or not. I might. So what I do is I send back a note, and I actually, the woman who sent me the note, I sent back and I said, listen, I'm not a prospect at this point. Here's why. Here's the stage I'm at. Here's the situation I'm in. Here's why I'm not a good fit. And I wrote, P.S., I'm not throwing an objection to give you a way to come back and combat the objection. I'm actually just leveling with you. But here's the deal. If you need or want, like if you still want to talk to me, I'll create time. If not, look, I'll keep you in mind. She wrote back, thank you so much. This is really helpful. Yeah. Level with me. We're good to go. I think what happens then, as I saw something today on LinkedIn, and it was like, somebody in your network likes it type of a thing. But it was a recruiter saying, I just made 4 hard conversations to tell somebody we went a different direction. But you know what? I think it's really important not to leave people hanging and to close that loop and to keep those relationships alive. And what I'm seeing happening a lot of times in the security space is we're not really good at that on both sides of the fence. Like there's a lot of people in security that do act like vultures, and I know that's maddening to a lot of people. And as we're bearing down on RSA, we know that volume is going to creep up for a while. I think what I'd like to see then as we get to more of the straight talk is understand that funnel and recognize that, you know what, sometimes you are a qualified lead. But let me tell you what I've boiled it down to, because this really unlocked a bunch of stuff for me this week. You have people that are prospects, and what makes somebody a prospect is that they have a problem that you can solve in a way that adds value to their situation. And then it's an opportunity when that prospect says, I have that problem and I'm ready to change. The status quo of their situation is not bearable. They'll go through the discomfort of change to get whatever you can offer them in its place. They're excited about that. Where that starts to get exciting then is that when you're looking at stepping out and doing a startup, you got to go sell to somebody, and you got to go sell to somebody that you don't know. And if it's $1,000 sale, that's great. And over time, you're going to learn what John's learned. There's a way that you can meet the right people that are looking for what you're able to do. They're prospects because they have the problem where you can add value, and they're excited, and you can guide them through that. And I'm willing to bet you guys have a sense of how long it takes from the first time you contact them and how many calls they need or what information to send them. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm happy with that. I think that it's so incredibly variable, and I think that you lose sight of it if you start getting frustrated. We have engagements where they'll sign on Friday and we start on Monday. We have engagements where we sent a proposal in 8 months ago to a year ago. And I think that that's another point. If you have patience, and you're working with people, then they feel more comfortable. It's kind of like that whole, like whenever people are like, well, I can't seem to get a date. Well, if you seem panicked, if you seemed rushed, it's never going to work out. You got to be okay with yourself at some point. And I think that that's huge. The reason why this particular article does bother me, and I just kind of hit upon it, is this becomes, as far as I can tell, a way for managers to justify whenever sales figures start going down in their organization. Whenever you have people, sales engineers, who are okay, but they're not rock stars, then you can start developing these types of metrics to make that all right. And that was something that we dealt with.
That's an interesting point.
That was something that we dealt with a while ago. We don't really have that problem much now. But if I was on a sales call, or if Paul was on a sales call, the odds of that sale coming through...
I don't go on sales calls for BJS.
Yeah, that's right. In the state of South Dakota, it doesn't ever happen, ever. If Paul ever assisted, or his presence was there, hypothetically, then that conversion rate was much, 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 much higher. And we found out that... if we weren't, then it would be much lower. Okay. So we could justify that and say, well, it's a lower percentage, and it's a percentage that we're okay with. Or you can try to figure out exactly what the hell's going on in that overall process and try to better train your people so that they can be more successful.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that's missing from this, is we have a lot of people that are sales engineers. They have an idea of how sales actually work. But some of our best salespeople that we've ever met, like Brian Correa, who was with SANS and is now with ISC Squared, doesn't seem like a salesman. Yeah, he did. Doesn't seem like a salesman at all. If you go to Alex Horan, not a sales guy, but many people buy their product because of Alex. Yeah.
Well, and so there's an interesting point in that, and I don't mean to interrupt your flow, because it was really good, but what's making you uncomfortable about it is almost exactly why I put this in why I wanted to tackle those two together. There's a way that people buy, and so at some level you need to be cognizant of it. But then I think on our side we need to be cognizant that it's okay to be in that kind of a situation. And if we can talk more candidly about it, the reason we like the people who don't feel like salespeople is because they're always bringing us value. Mm-hmm. It's worth talking to them. They're interesting, and I feel good as a result of that exchange. So when I need something, I'm happy to call them. I'm happy to go figure that out. Yeah. And so we do find people. The reason that we just keep hammering the phone is because we watch Larry again Ross, and we know, okay, well, I got to always be closing, and it's a great clip to send around to people. But there is a point at which it would be good to say to somebody, look, man, I'm not a prospect. I'm not trying to solve that problem. Well, I'm not throwing objections to be a jerk, like whatever. But then, I'm looking at it from both sides to go, that's kind of interesting. I don't know.
You got to shrink the top of that funnel, too. And I think the mistake that a lot of companies make is the top of that funnel is so big. And it kind of speaks to
everybody, right?
Yeah, where Mike and I talk about, like, my product solves everyone's problems. It's like, no. Start with a much smaller funnel that is more focused, that's based on facts, that's based on research. Mm-hmm. And then I think even better than always be closing, right, is what John talks about. Have a really good sales enablement program. Enable your salespeople. I think is even more important than just to go to your sales team and be like, always be closing, right? Yeah. No, you have to give them the tools and the knowledge and the expertise to be able to handle that smaller funnel.
Yeah, unless we cross over too much. That doesn't mean they want another battle card. I have never been in an organization where they said, you know what would really help me here is another battle card.
What's up?
Give me another PowerPoint.
Battle cards help. Battle cards help at the lower end of the funnel. That's where the customers are bringing up the competitive competitors'
if they bring up X, you bring up Y.
You battle against something else, so that way
battle could be internal too. Like battle could be a battle with an internal. So they're like, I'm not going to buy your product because we're going to develop this internal process. So usually your product team would come up with a battle card to say these are your talking points for sales about how you can explain value of our product versus something they'd either build internally or against another, but only bring that up into the conversation if the customer brings it up. And it's only something you bring up like when you're deeper into the sales process.
Wow, I didn't even know about that. You learn something new every day.
That was my life
that's
for a while.
For. Hey, let me take you guys through some of the startup notes of interest. So there's a couple of things here I thought were interesting. One caught me off guard, so I'm curious if it caught you guys off guard. I'm going to kind of take some of these a little bit out of order. So VC firms back record number of cybersecurity startups. And then it lists Trident Capital. There's Allegis Capital, 1011 Ventures. And then one of these in here was, the chatbot Demisto, $20 million. And that was with Jay Leak. and we just talked about him last week, leaving from Blackstone to go do this exact type of thing. This is why every time we do these stories about doom and gloom, there's no money, the deals were off, the IPOs were low, I keep saying that's looking at the wrong stuff. This is security is still hot. There's still money to be had if you've got a good idea. But I think what we've talked about is if you've got a good idea and you have a good team and a proper vision and you can execute on fundamentals, there's money out there for you.
Yep.
Well, and I see a huge shift in it too. I mean, people think that the trajectory for a lot of these companies is going to continue in the IPO type trajectory. And I think in the last segment that we had, we talked about multiple different quote unquote exit strategies. It's not always that one thing. And you talk about the money that's getting dropped into this industry. My biggest fear isn't the fact that there's no money in it, the IPOs aren't going as big as they should. My biggest fear is, are we starting to build a bubble insofar as VC funding going into these things? That's a much larger fear for me. I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's definitely on the horizon.
I agree with you. I share that fear. And the thing that I keep looking at is that as we have more cybersecurity firms being established and more people going into it that have that experience, I think that might resist it a little bit. I don't know.
Well, we see a lot of companies exiting successfully in security as well, which tells me that it's not you see a bubble if there's investment going in and there's no exits going out. Then
you know what's interesting? I may be completely off base on this, but looking at the fact that I think it's going to be more M&A than IPO, that might work to counter a bubble. Because in M&A, they're not inclined to overpay for stuff.
But
it doesn't mean they don't. I just mean
we've already seen a lot of successful exits, even years ago. I mean, look at SourceFire, look at all these companies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these were good exits for these companies. Hopefully, the customers are still happy after the M&A, which is mixed success.
And I agree with the M&A. I think that deflates the pressure. I think if you go IPO, you still have this tremendous amount of pressure to perform. If you are VC funded, you have a tremendous pressure to perform. Oh, yeah. And, you know, I think Paul and I have talked about it a number of times. The idea of IPO is not something that's interesting at this point at all. I mean,
I think there's a lot of people who feel that same way, that when they start looking at it, because a lot of people think, and I love the fact that you guys asked this question, a lot of people look at VC money and they go, oh, so I got to go IPO? No, that is not the only exit strategy. There are other exit strategies. And what I can tell you, and Will talked about this, he said, you know, a lot of the big companies now, they're not putting their dollars in R&D. What they're doing is they're building relationships into the startup space and saying, hey, somebody else will do it, right? It's almost like on-spec research and development. And if you like it, hey, okay, then I'll buy it. By the way, I'll come back to, because I'm positioned where I get to go work with both. I'm working with startups and I'm working with the big firms. You know the biggest problem the big firms have with startups? Michael, I don't understand what they do. I don't understand if they solve a problem that I have. And because I don't understand it, I can't engage with them. And that's why it's taking some of these firms so long to get traction. And that gives us some of these type of opportunities. So I thought some of that stuff was neat. There were some big numbers this week. And the one that I just started to look into was security startup StackPath. They've got $180 million in funding, and it looks like they're basically positioning themselves to compete with Akamai or something related to that. And they made a couple, I think they grabbed like Max CDN or somebody on their start. They just bought Highwinds, which is a CDN specialist. And I looked at it quick, and they started to put stuff around it. I think that's the other thing we're going to start to see. I think we're going to start seeing people give you a big pile of cash and then say, okay, it's your job, big pile of cash holder. Go pull in the stuff you want and build me something better as a result.
I do also think, like you were talking about them competing with with Akamai and some of those big players. If I was investing and I saw somebody like Akamai trying to do something and maybe floundering at it, I don't want to pick on anything, but take any of the security technologies that they tried to come out with, and they're not exactly exploding as much as they'd like them to. If I was investing, I would try to find a company that's doing what a large company like Oracle buying Dyn. That was a great example that was brought up earlier. If you have something that Akamai is trying to do, and you have a company that does it better, and Akamai has more money than God, or Oracle has more money than God, that is a great company to invest in, because that large player or one of their large competitors is inevitably going to come in and try to buy them out. It's basically fishing, and they're the bait at that point, and you're going for bigger fish.
Yeah, I completely agree. The other ones I threw up just because they were big numbers they came across. I actually had like 6 or 7 I left off the list this week. So I'll throw them on next week. But as we're coming up to our RSA, I think we're going to see a lot more announcements made. Evident.io, 22 million, which I was kind of surprised by. And I knew the name, but I hadn't really looked at them.
We talk about them a lot on Enterprise.
We talked about them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cloud infrastructure security services that enables companies to automate key security processes and compliance reporting. Yeah, I mean, they're basically, I hate to say cloud security company, but they're a cloud security company.
They're not, I like the word CASB. I think that's been one of my favorite acronyms over the past 25 months.
Cloud Access Security Broker?
Yes, CASBs.
CASB. They are a CASB. Yep.
So I think there's a lot of things. What I hope we're going to be able to start doing too is looking at some of these things differently. I mean, John, I love the fact that you're here because we get to do some of that interplay between what you guys are seeing in the enterprise and what's coming up. I'm sure we'll cover security startups that go after consumers. Go ahead, show me what they are.
Yeah, no.
we'll go ahead. We'll talk about them. Most of I think what we're going to look at is enterprise play stuff.
Yeah, but and so far, security companies going after the consumer are larger players in the consumer networking market, AV market that are going after primarily right now. They're trying to solve the IoT problem for the home user. I don't see a lot of. They're not. So there's not investments in startups that are doing that. Although I have seen startups try to play in that space. Largely, I don't think they're getting funding. I'm not sure exactly why.
It's a horrible play.
But I understand that I've seen actually that larger companies. I think it's D-Link and some other manufacturers make like an IoT security device, which I think it's interesting. Here's an IoT device to help you secure all your IoT devices. So.
But it also goes back to last night. We were talking about Triage. I believe that we've done Triage in the home market, and it's been abandoned by and large. I believe that we've done Triage, and it's going to be abandoned in IoT. And I think a lot of the people that are out there trying to solve the IoT problem are pretty much snake oil salesmen, by and large, unless it's like a vulnerability management. And that's, once again, an enterprise-level product, right? You want to find your SCADA devices, like we talk about Waterfall and some of those companies. That's different. But like home IoT, no, I don't think that there's any money there. And the reason why is I can't see how someone can convince a home user to spend more than $50 a year on their AV subscription.
Right.
I agree with you. Yeah, I completely agree. I think we're in for it, but that also goes back to this is where I get excited. I want to start seeing people come to us and say, "Hey, I've got a different way to do it." Like I'm tired of people telling me the only solution to phishing is we got to go teach people how to recognize phishing. Security people get routinely fooled by it at the same or higher numbers than the rest of the base of users in an organization. So as a result of that, I'm just still trying to understand why technology-wise we're not able to do better with it, and I think we've got our opportunities there. But this is great, John. I hope you can join us more often. This is fun.
I'd like to.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. You want to do our journeys real quick, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was talking. Can't remember anymore if we were online or offline. Big lesson I learned this week was simple starts have good play, and what I finally figured out was the opposite of straight talk is being stuck. And when you get stuck, largely because of friction, that's when you erode your value. So most of us have been around security projects that get stuck, and we had a line item anywhere from $100,000 to a couple $1 million, and it's just sitting there because we can't use it because I can't get anything going. It turns out that that's a pretty common problem. And so I still have the 3 big ideas that I figured out. I've been talking to people for the last week, and I am getting really excited because I think we've started to figure out how to get people unstuck and get some of these good projects flowing. And it's fascinating. Back to our conversation, we're talking about value, and we're talking about readiness and measurement and how it works with communication. And John, you'll appreciate one of the things I always ask them is, does this work in the environment we have? I don't mean how are you going to communicate? Does this work with the tools we have? If not, we should talk about that. So it's good. Like I'm you guys know this. It's a roller coaster. I'm kind of liking the downhill I'm on right now. It's woo fun.
What are we doing? We got an open source tool that's rocking.
Yeah, Rita's version 1 in 2 weeks.
I think we're still trying to figure out what we give away for free versus what we charge people for. That's still an ongoing conversation, and it's a very difficult conversation to have.
I think that
John and I, being in the security community for so long, we're like, yeah, we want to give people like more, and then we're like, but then
And I think personally for
balance?
me, I would be happy to give it all away for free, but I also have to feed my family. And,
It's true.
Funny how that works.
and yours, right? It's what we got to do. So there's going to be that balance. But the thing that's cool is the community of people that we have will understand. And I think that that's going to be awesome. We're going to give them something that's going to be cool. It's going to give them a lot of value. And we're going to sell something that's going to up that. It's going to be that little like mushroom that's going to make them trip out and grow bigger, I suppose.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily saving time, right? I think it's making people more efficient and effective at their
it's
jobs.
the power up. It's the power up, and I think that that's a good thing. I almost am exhausted. It's been a year of this, and it's been a really incredibly rough year for a number of different reasons. And a whole bunch of things took longer for a number of different reasons, but I think that we learned that that's to be expected. You better be ready for that. But I finally feel like we're at that point. Like, Mike, you said that you're on kind of a downhill. I'm ready to be on a little bit of a downhill for a little bit. And I think that we're damn close to getting to that. As far as like BHIS and Security Weekly, when did you leave Tenable? When was that?
February last year, so about a year.
February of last year.
About a year.
And think about the year, like BHIS growing, the year Security Weekly. I mean, Security Weekly is now juggernaut, right? And that's cool.
Yeah, we got 5 shows now.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it was a really, really rough year, but in a lot of ways it was a fantastic year. And it's just a matter of stabilizing, leveraging, and I think we achieved all of the goals that you and I set out in February whenever you left Tenable. And I think that that's a very cool thing.
Awesome. Michael, I know you got to run, so thank you everyone for watching Startup Security Weekly, and we'll see you next week. Woo!